All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our next Team and Culture session. My name is Shannon Winter, and I am the MC for this track for these next 2 days. If you haven't joined us yet for any of these sessions, it's all about teams. So I know you've heard this theme repeated in our keynotes and all throughout Summit, but we really believe in the power of teams. We think that a strong organization comes from strong teams at every single level. So we're really excited to have Ed here with us today. Ed is from a company we all know very well, Netflix. I don't know what his favorite Netflix binge is, but you'll have to find him after to figure it out. He is a senior software engineer, and he's been actually a super active Summit speaker even before Summit even began. He gave this talk a few times at some of our Atlassian user groups around the country, so that's really inspiring in and of itself. But without further ado, please welcome Ed Bukoski to the stage.
Thank you. So maybe I'll start with a show of hands. How many attendees here run their Atlassian tools in AWS? I can't really see. Yeah, it doesn't look like very many. So when I ask that and I get the survey, it's a little bit more hands up in the air each time. So I sense that more people are running their infrastructure in AWS, specifically the Atlassian tools. And certainly for Netflix, we are 100% in the cloud. We run all of our tools we run everything we have in AWS, including our tools. And if you do run it in AWS, you might have seen an email like this. This is email the engineering tools team at Netflix received on September 29th. This is the actual email. And what this email is talking about is that there's an instance with one of the instances we're running in AWS that they've detected, and that they're going to terminate that instance and move it to another piece of hardware so that instance can continue to function in a healthy way. And what was interesting about that instance was our production Bitbucket server at Netflix. So the source code that serves all of Netflix was sitting on this server that was going to be terminated. We run, and probably another data point here is we run server. We don't run data center. So this was our one node. And as you can imagine, with Netflix, everybody there running on AWS, we do not have, or that email box gets a lot of traffic. The engineering tools team at the time wasn't really paying attention to that, so we did not see that email. So sure enough, as stated in that email, on October 15, 2015, our production Bitbucket instance, it was nuked. It was just terminated by AWS. So in this slide, I want to talk about what happened next. So we engineering tools team, we came into the office and we did what we usually do. We got our coffee. We talked about what we were watching on Netflix. We actually really do this. At the time, I think it was Beast of No Nation had just come out, but we were really excited about Jessica Jones. We were talking about, hey, is that going to be better than Daredevil or not? So we were talking about that. Then we opened our laptops and we got to work. We just started working. It was a regular day so far. It wasn't until just before lunch in our hip chat room that we started, a team came to us in our hip chat, one of our support channels, and said, hey, Inch Tools, we have a script that checks into Stash every 60 seconds, and we noticed for about 20 minutes overnight that script failed. So of course our first question is, why are you checking into Bitbucket every 60 seconds? That seems a little odd. But when our second question is, what happened to Stash or Bitbucket? And so we looked into it, and that's when we figured out this whole chain of events, that our instance had been terminated and had also significantly come back up and reattached to the database and just started functioning correctly. And we really didn't know any of this until we started looking into it from this support chat. So to dig into this a little bit more, like why did we have such a positive outcome or a less negative outcome? And there's technical reasons. We follow the immutable server pattern. We're very aggressive about it. That's not the right word, but this is something we really believe in. And there's other things we do automation with the way we do EBS vol mounts and the way we manage our configuration, deploy to the cloud. We got very sophisticated tools to do this. But underlying those tools is like another layer, and that's the culture layer, and especially the fabric of scale, which predominates the Netflix culture. And it's the way this goes into our DevTools, and we reflect the culture in our DevTools reflects the culture, that we built into our pipelines this same resiliency for our stash and our DevTools that we build into our video content delivery service. So while there were technical reasons that this didn't impact us more than the 20-minute downtime and was, came up on its own, there's these cultural reasons too, which I want to talk about today, that how did we create these pipelines, and how did we work with teams, and how do we manage our support so that what we're learning in the Netflix culture was reflected in our tools, and we had a relatively easy day after what could have been a disaster. So I'm going to talk about scale and culture at Netflix. I'm going to talk about and I'm going to break down how DevTools works at Netflix. Specifically, I'm going to talk about teams. I'm going to talk about support, or the teams that we work with, how we support these teams, and I'm going to talk about how we deal on the DevTools team, how we deal with innovation and change. Okay, so first, scale and culture. It's impossible to not discuss Netflix scale. I work on DevTools. I don't work on the content delivery side, our video streaming service, but that scale of the video content, the scale of our service, predominates our culture. So these numbers are about our video delivery service. We serve 13 billion streaming hours per month. That's a really big number. Put that in perspective. There's about 7.5 billion people on Earth. So, roughly a 90-minute movie every month to every person on Earth is what that comes out to. 83 million worldwide subscribers, and at any given time, about 35% of the downstream U.S. internet traffic is related to Netflix. So these are big numbers, and you can see the slope of that graph is, that's not linear. That's a exponential growth, and the reason why this is important, and I'm going to switch over to the DevTools numbers, but the reason why that's important is our users, our developers who are delivering, the users of our DevTools are developers who are delivering these kind of services at scale. So they expect, hey, they're out there saying, hey, I'm writing code that delivers this at, the service to 83 million people, why isn't my stash working today? So there's a high expectation that we can scale the same way we scale our content delivery service. And I've got some more DevTools specific numbers here. And this is our build slaves graph to give an idea of how much more operations we're doing in our DevTools area. And we have 473 build slaves. We service about 1,450 developers and about 7,700 builds per day. And you see the slope of our build slaves graph has that sharp exponential look to it that kind of mirrors our streaming hours. So as we deliver more and more over content, as we add more features to the service, we're seeing an increase in the need for our DevOps tools to be able to scale as well. So that's scale. I'm going to talk for a few slides about Netflix culture. There's a culture deck out there. If you Google Netflix culture deck, you'll find it. It's about 100 pages and goes into the Netflix culture in much more depth. But the culture and the scale, again, is so important the way DevTools operates that there's a couple of things, or three things in particular I want to highlight about our culture. Freedom and responsibility, context over control, and highly aligned, loosely coupled. So the next few slides are going to be right off of kind of screenshots, grabs from the Netflix culture deck. But I'm going to break down a little bit these one at a time and talk about how they apply to the DevTools team. And the first one is freedom and responsibility. And the idea is that developer teams at Netflix have a tremendous amount of freedom to pick the tools they want to use, the technology stack that they want to develop in, and are not inhibited in any way by certain controls or rules that they need to follow. So they're welcome to choose any programming language they need to solve their business problem. But commiserate with that is this responsibility that whatever they pick, there's responsibility for them to run that service in an efficient way and also run it in a way that's compatible with the rest of the Netflix environment. So not doing anything too crazy. The ultimate kind of freedom and responsibility example is the Netflix vacation policy. And basically at Netflix, there is no vacation policy. You're free to, employees can take as much or as little time off as they need. There's a line in the culture deck that says, there's also no clothing policy at Netflix, but no one comes to work naked. And the lesson is, you don't need policies for everything. Anecdotally, personally, when I started at Netflix, this was so foreign to every 20 years of work experience I had had at every other company where vacation is tracked and holidays are tracked, and you report that up in some tool. That I actually, my manager's in the office. He does in the audience. He hasn't heard this story before, but I actually created a spreadsheet and started tracking my vacation because I just couldn't wrap my head around not a policy around vacation. So I said, okay, I'm taking these days off. I'm trying to start this, I'm targeting this amount of time off and these type of days off and vacations versus holiday days. And I did that for a year. And then the next year I updated my spreadsheet, and it was adding in new holidays and all because automation. And it struck me why am I doing this? there's no policy on vacation tracking here. My manager doesn't care. My team doesn't care. As long as I'm meeting my goals, everything's good. Nobody cares about this. So I stopped doing it. I just stopped using the spreadsheet. But the point was, not kind of the pros and cons of no vacation policy tracking, but that I had brought with me all this kind of cultural baggage from my previous company or my previous work experience. And it was important for me to understand how it worked at my current company and how the culture works and how, why does no tracking policy work and how in the context of the overall culture. And why did I feel this need to just bring this baggage along? It was interesting. The next one is context over control. And the teams at Netflix are encouraged to have context, to embrace strategy, metrics, and objectives, and avoid things like top-down decision-making, committees, management approval, things like that. So all these slides, again, if you Google the Netflix culture deck, you can see the whole context and more detail around these concepts. But the idea here is to give teams context, give them objectives, but not control them, not dictate to them specific objectives or specific types of technology that they need to use. And the third one here is highly aligned, loosely coupled. So we want our teams to, although they're fiercely independent and they're out there doing their own thing, we still need them to come together and be aligned and to be able to work together to produce new features and new services. So what this tends to manifest itself as is a heavy microservices style architecture where teams contract through APIs and through REST or something similar to that. So this becomes then the operating context for DevTools. We have Netflix scale, high availability, high resiliency, high demand. And we have this Netflix culture of freedom, responsibility, context over control. And all of this kind of comes together, and we have the DevTools team, which is a centralized organization that's working in this kind of different type of culture that inspires a lot of freedom, but has a lot of responsibility and a lot of expectations about scale. So I'll dive into next and talk about three things. I'll talk about how we work with different teams, I'll talk about how we support those teams, and I'll talk about how we deal with change and innovation. So first I'll talk about teams. So I'm going to really simplify this and just talk about two types of teams. There's developers and then the DevTools team. And developers are operating in this highly aligned, loosely coupled environment, and they tend to adopt microservice-style architectures. And they also have freedom and responsibility, which means that they're choosing their own tech stack, choosing their own tools, and that manifests itself into a lot of different deployment languages. Like we have Java, we have Node, and the next big thing, they're exploring new technologies that might help them deliver a feature in a new and innovative way. So on the DevTools side, we have context over control. So we're not able, it's not part of the culture for us to say, you have to use Java, or you even should be using Java, or you have to use these certain types of build tools. That's just not part of the culture. So we become part of, we take on almost like a marketing role. We're all developers, we're all technical people, but we take on sort of a marketing and sales role where we're talking to our developer teams, and we're selling them on the ideas of the best tools to use and how that's going to benefit them. And those kind of take the form of best practices, or what we call a paved road. So the job, what we have for DevTools is this Java paved road. And a little background first. We have different types of languages that we support, as I mentioned before. Java is the most common, and there's probably 80% of our code base, something like that, is Java. So our Java paved road has been sort of the natural first road that we've created. And we want our paved roads, our kind of set of best practices, best tooling, to be as friction-free, as supported, and as common as possible. And so while you're a new developer at Netflix, you just started, you can choose anything under the sun to implement your service and solve your business problem with. We want these paved roads to just be the obvious choice for you, that if I follow what the DevTools team at Netflix is recommending, everything, I'm going to get a lot of benefits, and I'm going to minimize the risks that I'm going to be introducing into the organization with some technology. And also associated with the Java paved road, you have a pipeline, deployment pipeline. So as you go from code to build to the continuous integration and then to deployment, we have sets of tools which are on our paved road, which help you at each step of the way. So for code, we offer, of course, Bitbucket. For build, we use Gradle and Nebula. We have a continuous integration service that we provide that consists of those 430 build slaves. We have our own deployment tool called Spinnaker, which is open source, that helps us deploy at scale to AWS. And the idea with these is teams free to not follow and not use any of these tools if they so desire. But if they exercise that freedom, then they have the responsibility to build these tools themselves, or find replacements, or find new ways for themselves to deploy these at scale. So with these paved roads, we sell a set of services to our developers that makes the most sense for the organization without exerting control over them. And then as we evolve as a company, we're offering other paved roads, like a JavaScript paved road and a Python paved road. So we have these teams that are now using all of our services, and now they're coming to us and they're asking questions. So how do we support these teams? We have the typical channels like chat. I mentioned in the example earlier that the first time we found out about our stash issue was on chat. And that's the most common way for teams to reach us. We also, of course, accept email. And interesting, we really encourage walk-ins. Another component of the Netflix culture is that the majority of the developers are on the same physical location, our campus in Los Gatos. And that encourages us to have more more direct interactions with our developers, and it also gives us kind of a sales opportunity. Somebody might come with us because they can't get a pull request to work. They contact us in chat, they ask a question, we can't work it out in chat. We'll say, hey, just come talk to us. We come talk to them, and we find out more about what they're doing, and then we can educate them on maybe something they're not doing on the paved road that would help them. Maybe they're deploying through a different tool, and we'll say, hey, have you considered using Spinnaker as your deployment tool? This would really help you. So this becomes a kind of, lack of a better word, kind of a sales opportunity for us. Some interesting things we do on support, and some interesting things we don't do. What we do is a first responder model, where we try to minimize the kind of constant stream of support and at least focus it on a single team member for that first initial interaction. And that frees the rest of the team from having to be distracted, and keeps them focused. I mentioned the one-on-one sessions and trying to be as hands-on as possible. And then we use these kind of interactions to feed back into our training. So when we have our next boot camp, or maybe a lunch and learn session, we can address some of the things that we've been seeing in in our support channels. Some things we don't do, we do not do tickets, and that's been something that has been a little bit controversial on the team. There are advantages of tickets. We could better track the amount of support we're providing. We could maybe build a knowledge base of that support. But what we don't want to do is give up our opportunity to be very hands-on and direct with our developer community. So we've been kind of trying to balance that. But so far we've erred on, or we sided with limiting the tickets and not having a ticket system in favor of having more direct interactions. We don't do any kind of support automation. We just haven't seen that as being something that has been effective. We don't have formal SLAs with our users, and we don't provide 24/7 support. There's a way in our chat channel that you can escalate through a pager mechanism where you can, if it's late and your Jenkins build isn't working and it's for some reason a really critical Jenkins build that just has to work at 10 p.m. at night, there is a way to page us. But the expectation is a chatbot will tell you, hey, there's nobody here monitoring this. You have to wait till tomorrow to get support. That's kind of the team support, but DevTools is also responsible for the operation support. We're all developers, so this is something that we are good at as far as automation, and we really embrace automating everything we do. We automate our metrics and monitoring, we automate our alert collection, we automate our backups, and as much as we can, we automate our upgrades. This screenshot is from our Stash operational dashboard, and as part of this dashboard on our production Stash instance, we collect over 100 metrics, system load, database connections, everything that Bitbucket publishes a lot of really good data through JMX, such as SCM tickets. We collect all that and we build these dashboards. And these dashboards operate on the same technology that we use to monitor our video streaming service and goes through the same kind of metrics collection process. So we just reuse those tools for this. And it's all real time and it's alert enabled. So what happens over time is we find certain metrics might change or might impact or have a relationship with how Stash is performing. For example, how long it's taking to do a backup. If a backup's running long, that might be a smell that there's something going on with Stash. We'll create an alert for that so that operationally we don't look at these dashboards unless we've been alerted and we need to look at like what a particular area, memory or the backup times, like I mentioned, or something like that. And so it's all automated. We're not watching these all the time. We wait for the alerts to come through. And you might be wondering too, like, oh, hey, Ed, this is really cool, all these alerts, but why didn't you notice when Stash was nuked on October 15th, 2015? And there's actually a really good reason for that. The reason is that we had just performed an upgrade and we turned off our heartbeat monitoring on Stash. So, and we forgot to turn it on. So, unfortunately, all this monitoring failed us in that particular case, but that's been a lesson learned for us. Now I'm going to talk about change and innovation. I've broken this out into two things. Change is, the way I've defined it here, is where you need to cycle a technology or change the way you're doing something in your org due to a kind of an external pressure. Maybe you need to replace an obsolete technology, like you need to upgrade your Java version. Maybe you're trying to reduce costs in the way you run your cloud services. Maybe there's a regulatory change like SOX, and you have this need to go across all these different developer teams, which are all independent, and you need a way to contact them and get them to change their service in some way, like change the technology they're using, or maybe use a newer version of something. So we have DevTools. We need to go out there and we need to figure out, hey, what teams are impacted by this particular change? Who's the owner of this piece of, we've identified a service, who's the owner of this service, and how are we gonna work with them to get that change? And as we work with these different teams, are they on track for a particular change? Are they responding to our change requests? So what we did is we developed what we call our change campaign tool. This is an internal application we developed, and it's taken a while. This wasn't something we could create very quickly. It required infrastructure and tooling in some of our other dev tool areas. But what it does is automates that process of identifying impacted assets, locating the asset owners, notifying them, and then tracking progress. So nope, I went too far. But tracking the progress. Are these teams responding to the change in an appropriate way? Are they on board with our change campaign? Before we had that, a change campaign at Netflix took the form of posters. We would literally print posters and say, hey, and put them up on the campus and say, hey, it's time to upgrade your Java application, and see Inch Tools if you need help with that, or something similar to that. And so the change campaign tool helped us greatly just improve that process, where we could automatically identify owners instead of just this broadcast, and then track how well these teams are reacting to our change campaigns. Okay, I skipped here, but I want to talk. And this is the Netflix UI from 2013, and it's based on the kind of the video rental metaphor. It's kind of like rows of box art, and the reason we have a culture of that stresses those values, freedom, responsibility, is we want our teams to be able to innovate as fast as they can. So this is our UI now, and it's just radically different. There's embedded video, there's animated rows versus static rows, there's different types of text, there's fading in and out of the box, what we used to be box art, but they're now the little screenshots. And it's the allowing our teams to be running as fast as possible, unbound, is what lets us move from that UI that we had a few years ago to what our UI is today. And if we plot like on a graph, this is the way we're viewing innovation, as this kind of risk-reward graph. And the DevTools team, we like to think that we're providing these low-risk paved roads that maximizes your reward if you're a developer team that chooses to use our tools. But the reality is we're probably somewhere in the middle. We're probably balancing risk and reward, and not quite delivering what we were hoping for in either, but kind of balancing the two. And so our innovators, our pioneers, are pushing new technologies. They're accepting more risk in order to get that reward, in order to advance the Netflix UI from where it was before, that kind of boring one, to what it is today. So they're pulling us in this other direction. And then we have other teams, what we call, which are trading off risk, or in exchange for less reward, they're also accepting less risk. So maybe they've already made their technology decisions, and they're trying to settle on those. But those pull us in a different direction, right? They pull us in a different direction from the pioneers who are trying to blaze this path out to the right. And this slide is interesting. I presented this at a user group, and I got a question of, hey, what about that upper left corner? What that seems to be empty. What could that be? And I was trying to think, man, what is something that's who is excited about high risk, low reward things? And I had to think about it for a long time, but legacy kind of fits into that category. You're not born thinking legacy, or you don't start off in that area, but I think as technology evolves, the reward that is delivering, because it's static, reduces, and the risk that it has just by sitting there increases. It's vulnerable to security issues. Maybe it's not as performant. So is it working? Okay. Okay, so how do pioneer teams work with DevTools? Freedom and responsibility allows these teams to pioneer. So they're free to go off and create that exciting UI using whatever technology that they think is best for that. But they also have a responsibility in our culture to tool and maintain it. So what that ends up manifesting as is we put that DevTools responsibility on that pioneer team. Sometimes they may be a team member to accept that role. Sometimes they may hire an extra team member to help them with the tooling that they're going to need to support that technology, because on our kind of centralized team, we just don't have the right tools for them. We're kind of in that middle graph, so we know what they need. So they're going to go out and build it. The idea is that we'll partner with them, we'll work with them, we'll help them understand what that responsibility piece is for creating their own tooling. Then this dirt path will eventually a critical mass will occur, and that dirt path will then form into a new paved road that we can kind of export and open up to the larger company. So this sounds really good, but the reality is a little different. It's been challenging for us. One issue is Hello? Hello? Okay, sorry about that. So the reality of creating a new paved road is a little different. One issue we have is a velocity mismatch, where these pioneer teams are moving very quickly. They may cycle through a couple of different technologies in the course of a week, maybe even in the course of a day. They may choose a couple of different tech stacks to use. So that's moving at a velocity we just can't even keep up with on the DevTools team. So that causes issues. Another issue is this focus disconnect. As a DevTools team, we're interested in sort of the bigger scale items that I mentioned before. Can this technology scale? Can it support the logging and monitoring requirements we have at Netflix? This little pioneer team, they're interested in if it works for their team of 4. You know, there's a disconnect on maybe focus and priorities that arise. And there also could just be gross tech incompatibilities. They may choose something that's so crazy that is just completely incompatible with our tooling. And there's also team constraints. There may be issues with our team's got limited bandwidth. They've got a need to move very quickly, and we don't even have the time to talk to them. They don't have time to talk to us. So this model is something we're working on. We're trying to make it better, but we've encountered a lot of challenges with it. So DevTools and Netflix, the big takeaways. It's so important to blend the DevTools with culture. Understand whatever your company culture is, and make sure you're building the right tools that reflect that culture and that enforce those company values, the cultural values. Build paved roads. We've had a lot of success with advocacy on our paved roads and communicating out to our larger organization, hey, these are our best practices, and these things really work, and you get all this stuff for free. And we can do that without exerting control. We don't have to do it with control. We can do our sales gig. Promote, again, kind of the sales side, promote best practices, tools, and culture. Create tools to facilitate change. We've had a lot of success with our change campaign tool. It's been very valuable for us to get new messages out into our organization much better than what we've had with the posters. Embrace your customers, empower innovators, talk to the people who are out there doing different things. You know, what about your dev tool set is causing them pain? Why can't they just follow, you know, what you've laid out? Talk to them, empower them. And we've had a tremendous amount of success automating our operational support. And by automating that operational support, that means we're focused on our big challenges, like creating a change campaign tool in the past, and now trying to make our paved road paths much better. But by not having to monitor stash and make sure it's up and relying on our alerts and our automation, that gives us the time to do And then alignment and communication are critical. Again, just talk to your dev teams, understand what they're doing and why, and how you can make the tools better so that you can better support them. So that's it, and I'll take questions.
Okay, thank you so much, Ed. That was awesome talk. We have a lot of great questions. We only have a few minutes, but we will do a couple. One of them is, sorry, lost my place. How do you motivate the team to perform at a fast pace, time and innovation-wise?
Question is, how do you motivate a team to?
Just how you motivate them, like time-wise, innovation-wise, like how to motivating at a fast pace.
I think the short answer to that is we don't. I mean, it's not. DevTools is there to help promote a more efficient, faster way of producing services and improving the Netflix service. But you got another problem if you need to motivate your team, I think. I think there's another issue there. It's not a DevTools issue.
What happens when the culture you want from development teams does not align and cultures clash?
Back before, as you're asking that, on the motivation question, I mean, the culture, the freedom responsibility culture, I mean, the idea is the devs are motivated because they're able to pick the technology stack they want, so they're not constrained. They're highly motivated to pick the best tools, the best technologies that will help them solve the problem. So, sorry, what was the other question?
The other question was, I don't remember, because now I'm looking at the next one. Sorry. There's so many. You guys are doing great, asking a lot of questions still. It's what happens when the culture you want from development teams does not align, so cultures are clashing.
Cultures are clashing. So, I'm trying to think of what an example of that would be. Can you repeat it?
Yeah, what happens when the culture you're wanting out of your team isn't aligning, like cultures are clashing?
So I had the slide up there about highly aligned, loosely coupled. And so we do invest at Netflix a lot of energy in that and making sure that teams are aligned and having conversations and making sure that doesn't happen. But because that's bad. I mean, if your teams are moving in different directions, and that's going to be bad for the organization, bad for the service.
Awesome. Is your dashboard a custom plugin for internal use, or is it something on the marketplace?
It's not available. I can tell you a little bit more about it. Bitbucket publishes all the metrics through JMX, and we enable the JMX service on Bitbucket. We have a Groovy script that takes that data, reads that data out once every 60 seconds, and then republishes it to Atlas, which is our internal monitoring system. And then the dashboards are built through a third system called Dashboards. And unfortunately, Atlas is open source, but the dashboards are not. So you could get some of that through open source, but not the dashboard piece.
Cool. And then the last one we'll do, someone asked, how does DevTools fit into a DevOps structure?
I just was hoping nobody would ask that question. I know one of my team members did a whole talk on, it was called DevOps at Netflix, and then the byline was, punchline is, we don't do DevOps at Netflix. And I think the short answer is, we don't really worry about the labels a lot. We just focus on the things I mentioned in the slide. I mean, everybody on our DevTools team, we're developers first. We have a tremendous amount of operational knowledge and skills, but our focus is on building things rather than supporting them and operating them.
Perfect. And I don't know if you can answer this one, but it's coming up a lot. They want to know what the size of your DevTools team is.
Of the DevTools team? So my immediate team, which supports Stash, Bitbucket, is 5 people, but we do other things too, like our base, what we call our base AMI that we use to deploy out. We also support some of that pipeline I showed with the bakery and creating images. But I guess to cut to the chase, the entire team is about 20-ish people, and it really supports that entire pipeline slide that I had out there.
Perfect.
Okay.
Well, we're just about out of time, but thank you again to Ed. That was wonderful. Thank you for being a great audience, and we hope to see you again soon at our Team and Culture Track. Another round of applause.